Today we're going to be looking at the little bear Pokemon. And as you can probably guess, he's right here. This is Teddiursa. Say hello to Teddiursa. Hello. This is a normal type Pokemon, and as I said, it is known as the little bear Pokemon because he's a little bear. He even has a little tail. Now, this Teddiursa is a little bit rounder than what a standard Teddiursa would look like. You know, the first photo that comes to mind when you think of a Teddiursa, I'm going to put one right here for reference. He's a bit rounder, but we love him anyways. Now, Teddiursa, as you can see, is a small and round Pokemon, even though this one is even rounder than, I guess, the average Teddiursa. It has very short limbs, very soft fur, and a large head, especially when compared to, the rest of its body. Again, this one has a very large head as well compared to the rest of its body. Its most distinctive feature has to be the crescent-shaped mark that it has on its forehead, which looks like a moon. Now, Teddiursas are actually quite timid, like shy, and they're also quite sensitive. They're easily startled by loud noises or sudden movement, and when frightened, their natural reaction is to cry out for help, like a baby. It's not officially a baby Pokemon, but it is a smaller Pokemon, which, tends to need care from its older peers, its older evolutions, its further evolved forms. Now, as I said, it cries out, which can obviously alert nearby adult Pokemon or further evolved Pokemon, or it might even be able to scare off smaller threats, a loud screech, you don't expect it. And then maybe the threat is like, okay, this screech is too much, I leave as well. Now, Teddiursas spend a lot of their time foraging, looking for berries, honey, and other small treats. It loves berries and honey. Teddiursa is actually really good at remembering safe paths and the locations of food sources, which is really good because it shows that, even as a young Pokemon, it has good spatial awareness, good memory, and good, ability to take care of itself, as much as it appreciates being slightly taken care of, being protected by stronger Pokemon. Teddiursas are naturally very cautious, and they prefer to avoid conflict, They would rather retreat and hide when danger approaches, rather than get hurt or fainted or, whatever. However, it is very curious, as I said, and very playful, and it will often experiment around in the environment, maybe climb up a tree and find a new berry to see if it likes it, maybe, go around and see what's all the way over there, all that stuff like that. It enjoys very simple things. It likes to roll around in the grass. It's just kind of doing its thing in the grass, being cheerful, being happy, anything like that. It's just a Pokemon that's just chilling. He's just vibing. He's living his best life, just having a happy time, playing around, eating, having fun, trying to enjoy itself. Sort of related to these abilities that it has, where he's like always finding items in the ground, always exploring, grabbing a new berry, grabbing honey. That comes to show when we look at Teddiursa's abilities, right? Teddiursa, one of his first abilities that it has is the ability Pick Up, which, as you might imagine by the name, pick up, right? To pick something up. Teddiursa has this habit of collecting items, specifically after a battle or while walking. If you have a Teddiursa on your team and it has the ability to pick up, it will randomly pick up items. Maybe it picks up an empty Pokeball, maybe it picks up a berry, maybe it picks up whatever, And this obviously reflects the habit of Teddiursa always gathering food and always like looking for stuff, being very curious and very, aware of its surroundings. The second ability that Teddiursa gets is called Quick Feet. Now this one's feet might not be very quick, but Teddiursa can have the Quick Feet ability. And what this does is that if Teddiursa is hit with a status condition, so if it is burnt, if it is frozen, if it is poisoned, if it is paralyzed, if it is any of those, Teddiursa's speed will actually increase by around 50%, right? This also shows, as we mentioned earlier, its ability to like avoid conflict, run away, get out of there, especially when it knows, okay, I am harmed, I am burnt, I am poisoned, whatever it is, it knows now, okay, I need to leave, I need to avoid this conflict, maybe get an adult to come help me and take care of me. Now Teddiursa has a third ability, and this is known as its hidden ability, and this ability is called Honey Gather. Can you guess what Honey Gather does? I'm sure you can guess. Teddiursa will gather honey naturally, right? It can either store it or use it to attract other Pokemon, whatever it is. This obviously once again shows how it's got this like this curiosity and this like desire to like keep grabbing things and like exploring things, especially honey is something that it likes. It will go around gathering honey, maybe to eat, maybe to just have, for a snack, for whatever it wants. So that's all three abilities that Teddiursa gets. If we look at some of Teddiursa's moves, we get a lot of the moves that you'd expect from a first stage normal type Pokemon. We got moves like Tackle, very basic. Scratch, as you can see, has little claws, perfect for scratching. Bite, it has a mouth, perfect for biting. Fury Swipes, again, its little claws, perfect for Fury swiping you if you do not behave. So this is all to give you the idea or picture, I guess, of a Teddiursa walking around the forest, maybe finding a bush or a tree and being like sniffing around, like sniff, 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 and maybe seeing like, oh, sniff, sniff, this berry smells nice, let me taste it. I like this berry, this one over here, I taste it, I do not like it so much. And now, as we said, right, it likes to remember a lot of these things, so it knows that this berry he didn't like, but this berry over here he did. I'm not talking about my little assistants over here. I'm talking about an imaginary berry, yeah. But it knows, okay, I like this berry. I know the path to get to the berry for next time I'm in this area. I know that I can eat this berry, Very resourceful Pokemon, especially considering that it is quite a small Pokemon and it is just a first stage. So, Teddiursa, what do you think of soft squishy Teddiursa? Because let me tell you, when he evolves, he changes a lot. He gets a lot bigger and a lot scarier, but I think for the wrong reasons, he just gets bigger. He can't control what he becomes. And with that being said, let's look at Teddiursa's evolution. Okay, we're going to put you over here, and I'm going to put the evolution over here. And the evolution is known as Ursaring. Here he is, as you can see, a lot bigger and a lot fiercer. Now, Ursaring is known as the hibernator Pokemon because, as bears tend to do, it hibernates a lot, right? And now, as you can see, Ursaring is a lot bigger than little Teddiursa over here, right? It has a very muscular frame, very long arms with really big claws coming out of them, as you can see. And it has really strong and dense sort of fur to protect it from not only attacks but also from harsh winters. As we said, it is a Pokemon that hibernates a lot, so it needs this fur to stay warm and to stay protected from the harsh environment as well as potential attacking Pokemon. as you can see, this sort of crescent moon that Teddiursa had has now disappeared, I guess, and Ursaring now has a ring-shaped mark on its chest or belly, I guess, which sort of represents a full or a new moon, which kind of goes to show like the cycle of the evolution. You know, it starts with a crescent moon and then becomes a full new moon. Now, as you might see, Ursaring looks a little bit intimidating, right? It's got a very strong and imposing size, but regardless of this, and regardless what people tend to say, right? Ursarings are not generally, they are not aggressive Pokemon. I know it's hard to believe, because I'm sure you've heard a story of an Ursaring maybe chasing someone or attacking wildly, you know, but Ursarings are not generally aggressive Pokemon. Most Pokemon are actually not aggressive unless they are provoked, and that is the same with Ursaring. Ursaring will attack mainly to defend itself, defend its food, defend its territory. If you've heard a story of someone maybe being attacked by an Ursaring, which I hope you haven't, I hope you didn't know them personally, but this is usually because maybe they wandered into a wild Ursaring's territory, maybe they accidentally took its food, maybe the Ursaring thought that there was some sort of threat to it or its family or its little Teddiursas that it takes care of, you know. Now Ursaring, as sweet as Teddiursa looks, right? Ursaring is really, really strong. Its strength is extraordinary. Its attack stat, right, is higher than a lot of Pokemon. Let me give you some examples, okay? Ursaring has a higher attack stat than Gyarados, Gallade, and Blaziken, just to name a few. And it has the same attack stat as Garchomp, Mamoswine, and Beartic, and even the same attack stat as some legendary Pokemon. What? Yes, so it has the same attack stat as Urshifu, Kyurem, and Ho-Oh. What? I know, right? That's insane. Can you believe that this, well, not this one, but that this bear, you know, has as much raw offensive power as some of the ancient legendary Pokemon from the Johto region? That is insane. But yes, don't provoke it and you should be fine. Now Ursaring is quite a solitary Pokemon, but it may tolerate others. You know, if it has a lot of food sources, if it has some Teddiursas that it likes to take care of, that's fine, but usually they're quite solitary Pokemon. During the active season, so when it is not hibernating, it goes around looking for berries, maybe doing a bit of hunting as well, and you know, it can even climb trees with surprising agility, which is terrifying to think about if you provoke it, because you're like, oh, I'll go up a tree, he's really big, he can't climb it. No, he can climb a tree, and he can probably climb a tree faster than you, but let's not think about that. Again, don't provoke it, and you'll be perfectly fine. It might even share some food with you if it has too much. Now, we have to once again look at its abilities, because as much as little Teddiursa here has 3 very nice abilities, when it evolves, Ursaring actually gets a different set of abilities, right? It does keep the ability Quick Feet. Some of them can still have Quick Feet. But I feel like rather than using it to run away, like Teddiursa, you know, run away, it would use it to act under pressure, maybe attack someone faster, maybe, you know, use this extra speed for defending itself, you know, in whatever way it might have to. Now, its second ability is called Guts, and if you know about Guts, you know that this ability is really scary. What Guts does is it increases Ursaring's attack when it is hit again by a major status condition. So the same thing that Quick Feet sort of like survival instincts that wild Ursarings have, right? When they get hurt, or they get angry, or they get affected, they are burnt, obviously they're going to be angry about that. Ursaring will channel this anger and this frustration into raw strength, into pure power, and that's why it has so much more attack. That's why it can pack a punch a lot harder. So be careful once again. But as I said, if you don't provoke it, you will be fine. Lastly is Ursaring's hidden ability, right? This is called Unnerve, which what this does is it prevents the opponent from eating a berry. So if Ursaring's opponent has a berry, that it could eat it to maybe heal or increase a stat or anything like that, right? Unnerve makes it so that they cannot eat this berry. They are so nervous, they are so anxious about Ursaring's intimidating presence that they are not able to concentrate and like eat this berry that would benefit them. Now, when we look at Ursaring's moves, right? Obviously, it's no longer going to be using Scratch. It could, but it now learns a lot stronger moves. It can learn Slash, which is a very powerful claw attack. Its little claws are not so little anymore, right? But it can also use way stronger moves of a lot of different types, such as, for example, Hammer Arm. It will hammer you with its arm. Very, very strong attack. It can also use Crunch. It has powerful jaws that it can crunch you with. But it can also use really strong moves, such as Earthquake, which is really strong, and Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam, so it can even hit you from a distance. So, yeah, very scary. So with this situation, I kind of want you to picture, an Ursaring, again, in a forest, just like the Teddiursa, collecting berries, but instead of being a little more playful and just like sniffing around, eating around, this one is kind of keeping a watchful eye in the surrounding, It's like watching, like, okay, is there any threats around, anything that I need to be careful around? Is this little mouse maybe a threat? It is not. Okay, fine. Next, is this person a threat? Oh, maybe it is. Maybe I'll have to attack them. Hopefully not, though. But yeah, it's keeping a watchful eye all the time. It might, take a little break to, I don't know, climb a tree, enjoy the weather, whatever it is. But it's a chill Pokemon, but it's always alert, It is very, very powerful. But it will not fight just for the sake of fighting, It is intelligent and conscious enough to realize, I don't need to fight this Pokemon. I don't gain anything from fighting them, so I will not fight them, Which I think is really smart. It shows signs of a lot of intelligence and, signs of like being able to being able to think rationally and be like, okay, I don't gain anything from this, so there's no point of me fighting this. And that's the end of Ursaring for now. And I say for now because back in the day, a lot of years ago, in the Hisui region, which is now known as the Sinnoh region, right? Ursarings were able to evolve into a Pokemon known as Ursaluna under unique conditions, right? We are still working on it. We have seen some Ursaluna in the wild, but it's still a really, really rare Pokemon that is still being investigated. Why did it exist back in the day and not now? Why did Ursarings stop evolving into Ursaluna, Well, you see, the legend suggests that an Ursaring has to be exposed to a peat block during a full moon in order to evolve into Ursaluna. And, what is peat, right? Because Ursaluna is known as the peat Pokemon. So a peat is basically like ground. You don't need to focus on that for your exam, but it's like a sort of ground, right? And peat blocks are really, really rare. So it is really really hard to find one, which means it is really hard to find an Ursaluna nowadays. Even back in the day, they were really rare as well. But now they're even rarer, which is why we practically do not see Ursalunas. It is a Pokemon that is rather ancient, and it really shows the connections with the natural habitat that it had back in the day. It used to live in areas with a lot of ground, a lot of peat, which is what allowed it to evolve. But the legend always says that it can only evolve during a full moon, which is like, not only do you need this like really hard to find material, you also need a full moon, so the conditions have to be really specific. Ursaluna, however, is a monster. It is now a ground and normal type Pokemon, so it is now also a ground type. Its body, as you can see, is a lot bigger and even heavier than Ursaring, with sort of like soil covering its fur and like sort of reinforcing its limbs. Ursaluna moves really slowly, but really deliberately, being patient and, controlling its strength, because obviously it has an even higher attack than Ursaring, which is insane. It has a really well-developed sense of smell, like we knew that Teddiursa had for smelling berries, smelling honey, all that good stuff. But Ursaluna's really powerful sense of smell allows it to detect objects that are buried underground, including, food. It's even been said that it can detect valuable minerals, which I don't know why I would want that, but it can detect a lot of things underground, which is weirdly really useful. And it's also very interesting ability for a Pokemon to have, considering especially that, it didn't have stuff like this when it was an Ursaring. It had to smell, but it wouldn't go under the ground. It would usually go on bushes, trees, berries, all that stuff. Now Ursaluna also has a different set of abilities from Ursaring, so we're going to go through them again. It maintains guts, and its hidden ability is still Unnerve. So if you burn it, poison it, all that stuff, its attack will increase. Or you might not be able to eat berries in front of it. But it does no longer have Quick Feet as an ability. As you can see, it is a lot bigger, heavier, and slower. And now instead it has an ability called Bulletproof. Bulletproof. Now what this ability does is it protects Ursaluna, in this case, from certain projectile moves. So projectile moves will not work against Ursaluna. Now you might be wondering, what are projectile moves, right? Well, projectile moves are usually moves that are either balls or bombs of some sort, Think of, for example, think of Shadow Ball, think of Electro Ball, Energy Ball, or a sphere. It's a sphere, it's a ball, Stuff like Egg Bomb, Magnet Bomb, Mud Bomb, Sludge Bomb. You get the idea, I think, right? All these are projectile moves, and they will not do any damage against Ursalunas if they have the ability Bulletproof. Now let's move on to, again, some of the moves that it can have. It can pretty much have all the moves that Ursaring has as well, but it also learns another set of really strong ground type moves and normal type moves, and a lot of variety of types, such as High Horsepower, again a very strong ground type move. It can now learn a fairy type move in Play Rough, which is really useful if it has to encounter a dragon type Pokemon. It can even deal with dragons now, like what? And yeah, a variety of really good moves. It can still use Earthquake, it can still use Hammer Arm, it can still use Crunch, it can still use Hyper Beam, all that good stuff, And with this in mind, I want you to think of a massive Ursaluna crawling around the lands of Hisui, of ancient Sinnoh, digging around, sniffing on the ground, looking for berries, roads, Maybe it pauses, again, always alert, but this one is very mature, it's very aware of its strength, and it knows that, they're probably not going to want to mess with it. It's always aware, and it knows where the Pokemon around it are. It's very deliberate and very careful with its movements. It's always like slowly walking around, very patient and really attentive in the wild, making sure that nothing can mess with it. Not that anything would want to be honest, right? And that's everything we have for Ursaluna. Now, before we finish the class, because you made it all the way to the end, you get a special treat, which is that we are going to learn about a special Pokemon as well. There have been some reports in the Kitakami region, right, of a new type of Ursaluna, and it has been called Blood Moon Ursaluna. Here is a photo that we have found. Now, we only have photos of this Ursaluna because we've only seen one, and we found one photographer who took photos. We confirmed that it does look like it's real and it is living in the Kitakami region, but obviously we don't want to invade its natural habitat. So I'm really excited because hopefully we'll get to learn a bit more about it soon. Now, from what we know, obviously I want to take a flight to Kitakami and learn this as soon as I can, but from what we know, its fur is a lot darker and a lot rougher, and it has this sort of like, it's been described as a red eye at the beginning, but it's meant to be, I think it represents a blood moon, right? Hence the name Blood Moon Ursaluna. This is a crescent moon. Ursaring, for example, was a new moon, and this red circle represents a blood moon, which is a bright red moon. Unlike the regular Ursaluna, Blood Moon Ursaluna stands on two legs and does not really have the ability to sense underground objects like regular Ursalunas tend to do, likely to the fact that this is a Pokemon that seems like it has been alone for a very long time and affected by different pressures and different, environmental things that have happened to it. Again, we don't know too much about it yet, unfortunately, but maybe in the future we will see more about this Pokemon. It is more solitary, and we have definitely seen that it is a lot more aggressive than your typical Ursarings and Ursalunas, reacting really quickly and really decisively to potential threats or anything like that. There are many mysteries around its origin. Where did it come from? Is this a separate evolution? Or is this an Ursaring that has kind of grown up in a different environment, in a different way? It has learned to stand up on two legs, and now it's like this. There's many mysteries. Maybe it has something to do with the lunar cycle. Obviously, Teddiursa has a lot to do with the moon. So maybe it evolved during a blood moon instead of a normal full moon. We don't know. We're still working on it. Obviously, blood moons are rare, so we cannot experiment until we see another blood moon. But yeah, we're still studying its habits. We're trying to understand, why it is what it is, why its power seems to be so connected to the moon. But yeah, we are still researching its habits, its power, to kind of understand what's going on, But what we have found out is that it seems to have an ability that we have not seen before, and we have named this ability Mind's Eye. What this ability does is that it allows Ursaluna to hit ghost-type Pokemon with normal and fighting-type attacks, which is really good considering ghost-type Pokemon cannot be hit by normal-type attacks or fighting-type attacks. But this ability also seems to make it so that Ursaluna's accuracy cannot be lowered. So you cannot use Sand Attack and lower its accuracy, for example. And it will also ignore changes to the opponent's evasion. So if you use Minimize and you're like, now I have a higher chance to dodge your attacks with Ursaluna, that is not happening with Blood Moon Ursaluna. That is not happening. It's going to hit you no matter what. And we found out that that is the only ability that we've seen Ursaluna have. Again, we haven't seen any other Blood Moon Ursalunas so we cannot confirm if it has another one, but it seems like this would be the only Ursaluna, the only ability, that Blood Moon Ursaluna has. And by the way, it's still a ground and normal type Pokemon, as you would imagine. It is. I believe that in its core, it is still an Ursaluna. It just went through some changes when evolving, or when it was doing when it lived its life, Now, moves-wise, still gets all the moves that Ursaluna gets. Earthquake, high horsepower, hammer arm, play rough, crunch, all that stuff, right? But this Blood Moon Ursaluna has used a move that we have never seen before either, which we are going to assume is its signature move because no one else can use this move. And we have named this move Blood Moon. Blood Moon. Now, Blood Moon is a really, really strong attack that only Blood Moon Ursaluna has access to. You kind of have to think about it like a Hyper Beam, because it is a normal type special attack. It is a blast of energy, I guess, which is said to be taken from a full moon, and it gets its energy from the moon and kind of shoots it at the enemy. It's a little bit weaker than Hyper Beam, but it is more accurate than Hyper Beam. And Hyper Beam, obviously, after you use Hyper Beam, you cannot move for the next turn, right? You're stuck without moving. With Blood Moon, we found that Ursaluna cannot use Blood Moon Ursaluna, cannot use this move like twice in a row, but it can still use another move in the meantime. So it's not like, oh, I attack it and I have to wait until I can recharge, It just cannot use the same move twice in a row, but it can use other moves, which was terrifying the first time we found out, because we're like, okay, now's our chance. Now it cannot move for a bit, and it suddenly hit us with something else. Bit scary. Well, I say us. It was my researchers in the Kitakami region. But yeah, that's everything. Just imagine if you were to encounter Blood Moon Ursaluna. I recommend that you sprint out of there, Especially, because you're probably going to encounter it in the Mist Valley at night, with its red, powerful eyes, and especially its red moon glowing in the night, It moves really deliberately. It's a very guarding of its territory, It will if it is disturbed, it will just attack swiftly and precisely, And even in pure silence, its presence is there. You can feel that it's near, This is at least what they have been describing, that you can feel that it's near, and I can probably imagine myself seeing one and feeling okay, there's something here. I cannot see it. What is that glowing red thing over there? I need to get out of here, But yeah, let's not think about that too much. We'll find out more information about this Pokemon soon. I just wanted to leave you on a little bit of a fun little note, since you've made it this far, So, as we wrap up today's lesson, keep in mind that, as I always say, even the smallest Pokemon can, show us a lot of wonderful things. In Teddiursa's case, it's curiosity, it's caution, and it's care, And it's exploration, constantly exploring, constantly seeing what is everywhere. And obviously when it evolves, Ursaring and Ursaluna demonstrate this raw power and the importance of having good survival skills, which it has sort of acquired as it has been growing up. And this ability to think critically and to be okay, I do not need to fight this, or there is no reason for me to fight, or I need to defend myself, so I will fight. This critical thinking, I think, is really interesting, because it is not something that you see in a lot of Pokemon, or humans by that matter. But don't tell anyone that I said that. Yeah, so I think the takeaway from today's class is quite simple. I think is that, whether small or big, Pokemon are fantastic creatures, Every Pokemon teaches us something different, and even a Pokemon which can be seen as a bit more on the brutal or scary sense can teach us patience, can teach us observation, can teach us intelligence. And I think it's really important that we don't judge a book by its cover, and that we treat everyone love and respect that they deserve. And with that being said, thank you so much once again for coming to class, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care. Goodbye. You can say goodbye, Teddiursa. Goodbye.